everybody for joining us today. We're delighted to provide this presentation on remote delivery of the diabetes prevention program and the key components and examples from Cooperative Extension. This webinar is being brought to you by the Cooperative Extension National Diabetes Prevention Program Interest Group. And we'll let you know a little bit more about us during our presentation today. I love Extension people because we're so flexible. I just want to let you know that I am calling into this webinar on my phone and I'm showing the slides on my internet, but my internet's a little bit slow. So if I begin to have problems with my internet, we may have to switch and have Lynn Margheim do that, but hopefully not. Hopefully everything will go well today so we don't have to do that. In today's presentation, we're going to do three basic things. The first thing we'll do is I'm going to let you know just a little bit about what is the Cooperative Extension National Diabetes Prevention Program Interest Group and how you can get more information about that. And then I'll provide just a quick overview of what are some key considerations when you're considering remote delivery of the diabetes prevention program. And then we're going to get to the meat of this presentation, which is our panelists. We have panelists from 3 different states who have developed their own remote delivery systems that are kind of distinct and unique, and they're going to let you know what they've done. And then after that, we're going to leave some time for questions and answers. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You've joined this call, but your camera and audio are on off, and that's kind of purposeful. We really would like you all, because of the size of the group, we have over 70 people registered for the event. We'd like you to actually use the chat function for your questions. And I encourage everybody, as we're having our speakers, we're going to do the questions at the end. But as you think of questions when the speakers are talking, please go ahead and put those in the chat box as you think of them. And then at the end, we'll start at the top and we'll go through those questions. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on our CE-NDPP website, which I've given you there, and you'll see it again later on in the presentation. Also, of course, there's going to be a short evaluation after the webinar, and that is very important to us. It provides us feedback on how we did and also on what other topics you'd like us to cover in the future. So if you'd please make sure that you go ahead and complete that when you receive it. Today's presenters, you see them here. You should also see them on the videos as they're speaking. But our first presenter is going to be Bridget Morrisroe-Amon. She's an assistant professor with the University of Idaho Extension, and she leads her district's NDPP program. The second presenter is my colleague here at Virginia Tech, Lynn Margheim, and Lynn is an instructional design specialist with our Population Health Science Department here at Virginia Tech. And then Kate and Nikki are going to kind of be co-presenting. Kate is an extension educator in Health, Nutrition, and Family Resiliencies programs at the University of Michigan Extension. And Nikki has a joint appointment with North Dakota State University as well as University of Michigan Extension Service, and they'll be presenting on their program. And I'm Carlin Raffi. I'm an assistant professor and extension specialist at Virginia Cooperative Extension, and I'm just going to provide a quick introduction to the CE-NDPP and then some quick considerations that you should be thinking of when you're thinking of developing a remote delivery system for your DPP program. So the National Diabetes Prevention Program Interest Group actually started in 2016. It was some of us here in the southern region decided we wanted to get together because we all wanted to do the DPP and we wanted to help each other out. Our purpose really was to increase the number of state cooperative extension services that are fully recognized by the CDC as DPP providers, and then to strengthen cooperative extension's capacity nationally to address diabetes as an issue. We started with 7 members, as I said, in 2016, and today we have members from 20 different states nationwide now with extension. And here's just a picture of where those states are. Some of our accomplishments. Our states combined have reached over 600 participants, and 221 of those have met that 5% weight loss goal. And then we've kind of estimated how much that is in dollars, over $2 million in healthcare cost savings. As I mentioned, we've expanded our membership, but also we've expanded our number of coaches. So we started off with 140 coaches in 2017 amongst us, and now we're up to 220. 5 of our states have full recognition, 4 have preliminary recognition, and 5 states have are in pending status. We do several outreach activities, including webinars. This is our 6th, and we have some resources we've developed for you as well as a website where you can find those. We have 4 work groups in the CE-NDPP. 1 works on quality support activities, and this webinar is a product of that group. We have a group working on common evaluations for the DPP program nationally in extension. We have another work group specifically looking at how do we become Medicare providers for the NDPPP in extension, and then we have a communications work group as well. So if you're interested later on, you'll have information on how to reach out to us. Now, I'm just going to create a real quick framework on things that you should consider or might think about when you're thinking about adapting your DPP to the remote delivery platform. So actually, the CDC has 4 modes of delivery for the DPP program. One, of course, is in person, and for today's context, the other is an online delivery program. An online delivery system, according to the CDC, is that it is 100% online. It's asynchronous. In other words, individuals can log in to that system independently, although participants must interact with their lifestyle coach at some point at various points during that 12-month period, either through classes, emails, calls, or text. So that's the online delivery. Distance delivery is really what we're focusing on today, and that's where you have synchronous sessions happening with the lifestyle coach and the participants together through some virtual platform, either a teleconferencing or a video conferencing. And then the CDC also allows you to do a combination. So you can do a combination of in-person and online, in-person and distance, any combination of these as well. But as you start thinking about how you are going to do remote delivery, one of the first things you might think about is what kind of technology you're going to use for that. And you would most certainly start out by thinking about who your audience is and the kinds of technology that they have to actually access your program. So that'll be one thing that you need to consider. Consider the type of technological equipment that your organization has, and then the cost of those things. So that's one thing to consider. What kind of technology are you going to use for your remote delivery, and is your audience going to be able to access it through that technology? The second consideration, of course, is the delivery platform you're going to use. And that, of course, depends on your audience in part as well. So you can use a telephone delivery platform, video conferencing platform, and there are different types of those, and we're going to just mention that in just a minute. But also you might think about things like, do you want to develop a program site, an online program site, where your participants can actually access the site, and on that site access materials and other resources you have for them, as well as your communication mechanism for them. Another thing to think about is how are you going to register your participants? Do you want to have some kind of a platform through which you do your registration? And I mention these because some of our panelists today are going to talk about how they've actually done that. So those are some things to consider when you're just starting to think about your remote delivery. When you're thinking about your delivery platform, some things to consider in terms of the capacity of that platform that are good for the kind of group dynamics that we want to develop in the diabetes prevention program. And so one of them is to think about a delivery platform where you all can see each other. This isn't absolutely necessary, particularly if you have audiences that don't have access to internet, et cetera, but if you're using some kind of a video conferencing platform, it's really nice for people to be able to see each other. Second, because there are individuals who may not be able to access that all the time, making sure that your platform also has a phone option, like this Zoom. I'm calling on my phone because my internet isn't that stable, but you can also see me through video. Another really great feature, because we like our diabetes prevention programs sessions to be really interactive, is the platform should have the capacity for the coach and the participants to share their screens. So you can be sharing materials that you want to use from the DPP curriculum or other things that you'd like to share. So that's a nice capability when you're considering your remote delivery platform. The chat function is always great, and we're going to be using that today. And then there are some other really nice features that some of these platforms have, like Zoom or GoToMeeting or Skype. Things like breakout rooms or whiteboards that you can use, almost like flip charts, virtual flip charts on whiteboards and things like that. So when you're looking at different delivery platforms, think about some of those things that you're going to want to be able to do during your sessions. Now, aside from all of that, here are some other things that as we've transitioned to this, we've had to think about, and we didn't even know we had to think about them. So I thought I would just list some of them here. One, how are you going to register your participants since it's online? Two, how are you going to get the DPP materials to your participants? Are you going to have that just be purely electronic? Are you going to be mailing things? How are you going to do that? How are you going to collect weekly weights and physical activity minutes? Because you need to document that. How are you going to do that efficiently? And then what about the food logs and food tracking? So we know now people turn in their food logs, lifestyle coaches provide comments and feedback for those food logs. In a virtual platform, how are you going to do that? And then there are some neat ways now of communicating virtually between meetings. We're going to show some of those to you. And the last thing that I want to mention is when you're thinking about the technology you're using, your delivery platform, and how you're collecting all of this information, how does the issue of HIPAA compliance come into your consideration of those things? So, of course, covered entities are those entities that are accepting third-party reimbursement payments for healthcare activities are called covered entities, and they need to be in compliance with some of the HIPAA regulations. So if you're in that category, that's another thing that you'll be thinking about just a little bit as you look into these programs. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. That was just kind of to set up our panelists. And I'm going to now just introduce our first panelist, who is Bridget. That was lovely. And Bridget, please just take it away.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and put up there we go. Okay, so I am Bridget Morser-Amon. I'm a family consumer science extension educator, assistant professor with the University of Idaho, and I lead the diabetes prevention program for our state. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, but starting in 2017, myself and a group of about 9 extension professionals and educators got trained. We partnered with our Department of Health to do this. So there's a team of 9 of us that have been delivering it since summer of 2017. Currently, we have 7 cohorts going on right now that are either completely distance learning or a hybrid of face-to-face and distance learning. I'll talk about that here in a second. But we did begin in 2017 as just a face-to-face program. Didn't consider online or distance learning or any of that, but there had been a kind of a demand, a request from others in rural areas, getting 4 or 5 people in different areas that wanted to do the program, but we weren't able to deliver it at each of those sites for just 1 or 2 people. So we started to look at the possibility of doing distance learning. So in February of this past year, February of 2020, before COVID, before I knew, I had applied to deliver distance learning through the NDPP, and we had began to look at how we could deliver the NDPP in a distance learning format. We did want to keep it in the support group model because that's really what the national DPP program is. It's really a support group model where you get a small group. We like to keep our groups 5 to 10 people. We've had bigger groups of up to 20 people, and it can work, but especially with distance learning, I've found if you keep it around 10, like you can see the picture here, that still allows for a lot of face-to-face interaction, that support group model. So that's what we chose to do. So in February, when we were looking, before February, we were looking at applying to deliver distance learning. We decided to use Zoom to have that virtual face-to-face, so there's still interaction, support group. We also chose Zoom because our university had the program. It was no cost to us because our university already had it. Then we also chose to use Qualtrics in order to develop an online consent form, an online questionnaire form, in order to keep the consent form and the questionnaire form separate in order to have that confidentiality and assign identifiers to each individual. So once they completed the questionnaire and the consent form, then we were able to give them a code, an identifier number, and they go into Qualtrics each week and enter their, or each session, and enter their weight and physical activity for that week. So there again, we're keeping that as just an identifier. They don't enter their names. We also send out weekly emails for each session. We would send out the handouts. We just used the Prevent T2 handouts. We didn't create anything new. We used the curriculum as is. We send it via email to each participant with a reminder that the session for that week and the Zoom link. The other thing we do in addition to this, so this is very, what I would call a very low cost, low tech way to start delivering the NDPP through distance learning. We were able to do it very quickly. Luckily, we started this in February, then in March, COVID happened. So we did take all of our face-to-face programs that were going on. At that time, we had one Spanish face-to-face program at a church. We had one workplace wellness program going on during the lunch hour with employees. And then we had two programs, one going on at a library and one going on at a health center. All four of those face-to-face programs, we transferred into the Zoom, the distance learning mode. And we actually had pretty good retention. Only one of our programs saw about a 50% drop, but that was a very large program of about 20 people. And even in our face-to-face, you would see that kind of a drop at the 6-month mark. So the other programs, particularly the Spanish program, I was very happy. We have had no dropout. They have been able to stay on Zoom, continue on. And so very happy about that. So I want to let you know, not to be too discouraged if you have to go from face-to-face to online, or to not be discouraged with language issues, because our Spanish team, our Spanish class has been doing very well with it and has done well. So in addition to using Zoom, using Qualtrics to enter data, and then using email to send handouts and weekly reminders, we also have a coach that has been using Pinterest. And so I'll bring this up. Next slide. Oh, here it's coming. It looks like the resolution. Can you guys see the next slide yet? I can kind of see it. There we go. So one healthy lifestyle coach has been doing a lot with online. So she's developed Pinterest pages that her DPP group uses online. One of them is for recipes, one of them is for workouts, and one of them is for motivational quotes. So this is another way, and I think very interesting way, that we may start using with all of our groups to kind of engage them, give them their own forum online where they can share information with each other. I know when we were doing face-to-face, often participants would bring recipes or share information. So this is a way to do that virtually. I also know, not in our state, but some other states have used Facebook and have developed Facebook pages where their groups can get together and share information and resources. I see a chat, someone asked, can all participants pin to the board? Yes, they can. However, I will note that there is a approval, so they can pin to the board, but then the healthy lifestyle coach decides whether that can go up onto the board or not. And if for some reason she would not allow something, or they would not allow something to go up onto the board, we would contact the participant and talk them through, you know, this is why we didn't let that go onto the board. That can be a challenge with it. For the most part, it hasn't been an issue. There's maybe been one or two that, you know, the coach talked with the participant and said, you know, we're not gonna put this up and this is why. But for the most part, it hasn't been an issue. The other thing I was going to share is one of the things that can be challenging when you're doing distance learning is the tracking. So if a participant is doing the food logs and we want to go over the food logs with them, what we do is we set up a one-on-one Zoom meeting with them where we will bring up their log on the screen and actually walk through their food tracking log with them and talk to them about it. So we do have some one-on-one Zoom meetings in addition to the to the Zoom group meetings. And that's a way to walk through their weekly logs and their food tracking with them. We also allow them to email us throughout the week with questions they may have. And the other thing we've done that's been very successful, and we've done this through grant funding with our Department of Health. There was a larger CDC grant that came to our Department of Health, and then they subgranted to DPP providers to promote the program. We are able to send digital scales. So we order those online and have them sent to participants if they don't have a scale at home. We also send out health kits, introductory health kits with a water bottle, a stretch band, different things to kind of motivate and incentivize them for the program, as well as little weekly trackers, a 2 or 3 week tracker to get them to start tracking their food and activity each week. So we do, just to kind of wrap it up, you know, we use Zoom as our meeting platform. We use Qualtrics for our data entry and data collection. We use email for every day-to-day communication, for reminders, for sending out the handouts. We are starting to use Pinterest, maybe using Facebook as a way to engage them further and give them out of the classroom type engagement. And then we also use the mail to send things to them to kind of just engage more with them. And we've had really, really good success, really good turnout. Right now, we have 7 programs in progress right now. 2 are wrapping up. I just started another one and there's 10 people enrolled in it. And the interesting thing is one of them is about 400 miles north of where I'm at. So that's a great part of distance learning, is you can reach out and reach people in rural areas. Somebody had asked how much we charge for the program. Currently, we're charging $50 for the program, which is a very low cost, but we are have received full recognition and are starting to look at charging or seeing if we can apply to be a Medicare provider and also get insurance reimbursement. As we know, many of the local, like Blue Cross of Idaho, some other insurance agencies do cover and reimburse for the diabetes prevention program. And yes, we use a combination of the grant money that we've received through the Department of Health and also some of the program fees that we collect. We use to purchase the healthcare kits, the incentives. And I should mention that we also do quarterly. So every 6 to 8 weeks, we'll do a raffle where someone can win a prize like a blender or a fitness tracker in order to keep them coming. So for every time they attend a lesson online, and every time they log their weight and physical activity, they get a raffle ticket. And then every 6 to 8 weeks, we will draw a prize and we will mail that prize out to them as well. So that's been a lot of fun. And we use, like I said, a combination of the program fees that we charge and then also our grant funding. And somebody asked, I saw in the chat, if we have to pay for staff. So there are 3 of us that are extension educators and our salaries are covered. So no, we do not have to cover our salaries. However, I have used grant funding to train and hire 2 healthy lifestyle coaches, my Spanish DPP lifestyle coach, and then I have another lifestyle coach, and we do have to pay those staff. And so again, we've used a combination of program fees and grant funding. But we are at the point where we're looking at building capacity to get reimbursed through Medicare and insurance companies in order to continue to hire staff.
And Bridget, I'm going to stop you there because
Sure.
I think probably more questions will come in and we need to move on to the next one. Thank you so much. That was very nice, Bridget. So our next presenter is Lynn Margheim with Virginia Cooperative Extension, and she's going to talk a little bit about her program.
Okay, let me, Carlin, if you could watch the people coming in, and then I'm going to remove the spotlight there. Hopefully that works for people. And okay, you've got those slides up. Let's see if they'll move fast enough so I don't take too long. So I'm going, pardon?
My slides are delayed a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to present more of a technical approach to what we're doing, and Carlin and Kim can add in some of the more details, but I want to just share the system that we've built, which is a little bit more comprehensive. One of our goals was we really want to get our more agents offering the program, and we wanted to make it as simple as possible for them. And so we wanted to have a platform that has everything kind of built in, so they didn't have to be thinking about where things are and what they needed to do and where they need to put their data. So we really want them to focus on facilitation and not those technical issues of managing all of these pieces of the program. We wanted to help them streamline their data. And also one of the big things is try to reduce the barriers for participants who might not be comfortable or familiar with online meetings to be able to join us. So those were some of the things we were thinking about when we did this. We are using Canvas, not Canva. I know a lot of people know about Canva. Canva is very different. Canvas is a learning management system that our university uses. Similar ones are Blackboard, Google Classroom, and it lets you build a bunch of pages that it's kind of like building a web page, but you've got all of your resources linked in there and everything's kind of self-contained. But so we built this platform using Canvas and using all the pages. This is a sample of one of the pages, and if you happen to recognize the icon at the top, I did swap or steal that from the national while we are creating our own. So that's kind of a placeholder. So I'm trying not to break any copyright laws. But this is just a sample of what the page looks like for the participants when they come into Canvas. You can go ahead and forward that, and I'll explain this a little bit more. Some of the other things, we're using Zoom. I'm not going to go and talk any more about Zoom since you all know about Zoom and all the features that you have in Zoom. We are using Google Forms because we have a HIPAA compliant Google system here at Virginia Tech. And we've hooked up on in every class, they'll come in and click on this track your progress button, and they'll come to this form over here that will let them put in a de-identified number and then enter their date and their weight and their activity minutes, and that will go into a spreadsheet then that our agents can use to fill out the required sheets. We also are using a registration system through our cooperative extension here in Virginia, and they will, we've been using this system not only for online but for in-person classes as well, and we're trying to work on improving that system so there's not so many barriers for getting into the program with a lot of registration hoopla. But and then real quick, I'm not sure if this is going to load here, but we are using oh, there it is. For our food tracking, we are using the Lose It app, as well as, I'm not sure if some people still prefer to put it on paper, but I think for the program we're running now, we do have people using the Lose It app. And then there's an app called Ascend, which takes all of the data from people who agree to join from Lose It, and so it lets the coach actually see all of their Lose It information, their food logs, lets them comment on them. Really cool, easy way to keep up that engagement through the week as you check people's food log. We've created a little video here showing people how to use Lose It, and that's built into our system too, so our participants can get familiar with it. I don't know if I need to talk about marketing too much, but we're doing a lot of marketing on Facebook and then as well as internally, so we can skip that for now. We're collecting that data. We are using a Qualtrics form to collect that data, and we're using, we have one person, Kim, who's on the call here, who is managing all of our leads around the state and then pushing them back out to our different agents that are running the program. So we're trying to keep everything centralized in one place. and then help facilitate the enrollment for our agents. And then we're also doing, we've set up a spreadsheet that you can see on the bottom there. I've got the tab name. So we have one spreadsheet for each agent where we're collecting their marketing, they're listing their marketing information and details about that. And then also we'll show you how they can follow up with participants and guide them through. But all of their data is in this one spreadsheet, and our program team has access to these spreadsheets, so we can collect all that data, and all they have to do is get it in, and then we take care of the rest. So that really helps. You can go to the next slide. And then when we get a lead, we just have the agent build their lead list in that next tab, in the inquiry list tab. So they're collecting just real simple data. You can go ahead to the next one. I think it has, oh no, hold on one sec. The inquiry form is real simple. We're not asking a lot of information when people just want to find out about the program. We did have them kind of going to this detailed form, and it was asking a lot of stuff. I'm like, that's a little bit intrusive. That might be a barrier. So we're just asking, what's your name? You know, do you possibly have, you know, are you pre-diabetic? And you know, what county are you in, and what's your email? How can we contact you? And then we set up a time to follow up with them. You can go ahead to the next slide. So we are trying to track all that information. And then the agents, we are doing our screening session on the phone. So we're trying to make this, you know, this is another way to build that connection with people and to have the contact with them. So the sheet that you're seeing on the other side is just a piece that we used in an in-person session 0. So we're just kind of going through and making sure that we're covering all this stuff on the conversation, and make sure that the person is really ready to, you know, to make that decision whether they want to join the program or not. And if they are, then we'll go ahead and complete the intake form. Now, some people have been doing their intake form on Qualtrics, and we decided just to do the intake form on the phone, again, to build that personal connection. And you can go to the next slide. And what Kim has found is, while she's filling this out on the phone, she's also learning a lot about the client. So she'll make little notes. You know, the client told me that they've been on, you know, Weight Watchers for 3 years, and or, you know, they've tried the keto diet or something. So you can get to know your participants and understand their experiences a little bit more, you know, by doing this on the phone. And then we'll take this data and put it into that same spreadsheet and put all the CDC information. You can go to the next slide. Put all the CDC information. So we've got here, you know, what you can just copy the information from your inquiry list over to this. Then you can start adding, we have a little on the bottom half, this spreadsheet just keeps going. So I made 2 screenshots here, but we're tracking here. Did we do the session 0? Did they qualify? Did we register them? And have we sent out the materials? We're sending materials through the mail, so they'll have a notebook. And then everything in the green band, which continues on, is all that CDC data. So we're entering that one time from that intake form, and that will automatically pass over to their session data, and that makes it really easy to track and then for us to follow up. You can go to the next slide. So here's a little bit about how we're delivering the class, what it looks like on the Canvas site. We've built in the Canvas site, we've kind of built in a training manual and all the resources for the coach, as well as the pages for the participant. So with Canvas, you can set one thing to be the home page. And so when you're running your class, the homepage is going to be the lesson for that week. So I created this directory page so the coach could kind of work their way through the system and find the things they need. So go ahead into the next page. And one of the pages for the coaches is a list of all of the lessons. So each lesson, each module has its own page that has, you know, all, we'll look at it, but all the, you know, the information for that session and some extra resources we'll look at. We've also created some coaching guides that we'll look at too, that give some, you know, easy to use facilitation tips, some resources. So our, you know, people who have not delivered this program, not familiar with it, they don't have to be thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do in this meeting? We give them some real tested ideas for making the program work for them. So they'll have those resources. Of course, this is all growing, and we're going to develop it as we go. as we learn. Go ahead to the next slide. So on the page, on the class page for that session, we get, again, the tracking button so they can enter their weight each class. We've put a little meeting at the glance, just give them an overview of what's coming up. They also have access for the participant guide online. They can preview that online or download it, but they also have the notebook. And then we've got the link to the Zoom meeting, and anything in orange here is what the coach would have to personalize. I've built this template and I'll give a copy to the coach so they then will go in and put their date and time and their information. So anything in orange is what they will need to update. Everything else is good to go. And then we also have this section here at the bottom, just some extras. We don't want to overwhelm people with too much, but have a little bit of links that relate to something that they did in the program that they might find useful during the week. So that is also up to the coach. They can add some things that would be helpful locally, or if there's a topic that their participants mentioned, they might want to add in a resource for that. And we've got more of these resources on the facilitator guides that they can pick and choose from. Go ahead and go to the next page. So this is just an example of what that, when they click on the track their progress, they get that this form where they can enter. And I think I already had a picture of that, so you can go ahead and skip that one. When the coach gets that data, this is the session tracking. So you've got everybody in your participant list, and I didn't want to have to X out data, so I didn't really put anything in. But once you put that participant list tab together, everything copies over here. So all you have to do for the session tracking is put your session data in here, and then copy and paste it down for the next session. So all of your CDC data will just be ready to go. It's kind of automated for everybody. So hopefully this will keep things simple as we gather our data every 6 months to present to the CDC. Next slide. So this is a picture of the coaching guide page. So we've just put here we put a copy of the coaching manual. These are the next thing is the slides. These I haven't looked through these really carefully, but these were from the National Diabetes Prevention Program. They're slides they've done for online programs. So if you wanted to use a slide set instead of just having a gallery view of your participants, then you could do that. So I need to look over these carefully. They have them in Google slide format and PowerPoint, so I put those there. Then we're building up ideas for icebreakers. We're building up ideas for facilitation, and want to just give people a starting point if they want to use those ideas. And then we're also adding just links to here. These are links to resources, so we can build these out and people can pick and choose what they want. And then the last section here for the guide is the follow-up post. So the CDC has some nice follow-ups with links that you can send after the class, and we're going to be building those as well. I know there's a couple groups that have been working on some text messages that we'd like to integrate in here as well. So with Canvas, the nice thing is you can send announcements out through Canvas. So those announcements will go out to everybody's email, and most of our participants preferred email over text. So we're using this to send an email out, and it's all in one system. We don't have another SMS system or an email mailing list or anything, so that makes it kind of nice just to be able to do that within Canvas. And that's one of our methods of following up with our participants every week. So go ahead and go to the next page. So Kim here, our lovely pilot program leader, she found the app loom.com, and so she's been recording these short little videos and sending them out to participants, and they've been really fun. In this video here, she has a little a riddle that she presents to them, and they have to answer the riddle and talk about it. And so Loom is really kind of a fun little thing. You can do a screen share with your picture on it, and or you can just do a recording. So if you want to check out loom.com and create a little account, I think that was really fun, and people are really enjoying those personal messages out to the group. So I'll let Kim comment on that after I buzz through the rest of this here. You can go to the next slide. And then another contact that we're doing is creating a 3-month report for everybody. And I'm kind of geeky. I love doing this kind of geeky stuff. So I created a spreadsheet, and this is actually a spreadsheet. And below this, what you don't see here, below it, you put in your weekly weights, you put in your activity minutes, and it will automatically calculate everything up here. I think you do have to put in your start. Well, maybe it doesn't have it. Anyway, so it puts all that in there. It creates a graph for you. And then we're going to make it so the coach can write a note here, and then the participant could write a reflection here on this report. We use these, Carlin started this with an in-person group we did, and they really liked getting that report and seeing what was going on. And, you know, if their weight wasn't changing, it was kind of a good visual just to see where and think about what's going on and what can I do to improve. So that was kind of fun, and I'd be happy to share that template if anybody's interested. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And I guess that was it. She cut anything else out, so that's good. So that's a quick review of the things we're doing. If Carlin, if I missed anything, or Kim, if you want to add anything, please go ahead.
I think that was it. You did a great job. Lots for people to think about, and I see we have some things in the chat. So y'all be watching that chat, and we will get to those questions at the end. I just want to make sure that Nikki and Kate have time to do their presentation. So if you all have any questions for Lynn and what she said, please put them in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to that in a minute. So right now, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Nikki and Kate for them to give their presentation. Make sure you unmute yourself.
Thanks so much, Carlin. I can go ahead and kick things off. So hi, everyone. My name is Kate Welshons. I'm joined here today with my colleague, Nikki Johnson. We're both from the University of Minnesota. We're very excited to share some of our learnings from teaching DPP via Zoom over the past few months. And so just quick little background. We're very grateful that the Department of Health here in Minnesota supported us to pilot a telehealth model of DPP using Zoom. And so we selected that because it's supported by the University of Minnesota. And so our planning process for that pilot actually started in late 2019. So our team really had the generous gift of time to lay some of the groundwork for our distance learning model, even before we started dealing with the pandemic. And so I think that provided us with a really strong foundation that we could pivot from once we had to quickly shift our in-person education to online starting later this spring. So today we'll be highlighting how we use Zoom and Qualtrics as our main platforms to deliver DPP, and then we'll highlight a few other tools and resources that we use to supplement our work. So you can go on to the next slide, please. Thanks, Carlin. So we've explored a couple of different options for registration. We have a database here in Minnesota. It's called SEEDS. It's an acronym. And we use that to collect our data for a lot of our in-person health and nutrition education programs. It's really slick. It allows us to auto-generate online surveys. So when one of our coaches know that they have a DPP class coming up, they can generate that link, send it to their participants where they can input their demographic information, that intake form, as well as some of the other pre-survey data that we collect for DPP here in Minnesota, focusing primarily on fruit and vegetable consumption. And then we also have some other coaches that have opted to use Qualtrics to collect that pre-survey data, or that they've completed the intake form over the phone. And all of those systems have worked well. I think we're just trying to figure out what the best fit is for us. And now that we've kind of piloted a couple of those different options, I think we'll firm up a more standardized process going forward. One of the things that our team really wanted to highlight today is a readiness assessment that we utilize as part of our key intake process. So at the beginning of a class, our coaches will connect with participants before that lesson 1. And so they'll provide some individual consultation that really helps, we feel, to optimize participant experience. So they'll talk through a number of different things during that time. One of the big ones is how that participant wants to receive program materials. For some things, if we have additional funding to send out scales, or Calorie King books, physical activity materials like exercise stretch bands. Those, of course, we'll distribute via mail, but for classroom handouts like PowerPoints, we'll defer to participant preference. So for our really tech-savvy participants, they may opt to receive those via email, while others just feel more comfortable having that hard copy in front of them, so they'll opt for mail. One of the things that we think is really important that we also just take some time to talk through things like, how are you accessing the internet? Do you have access to internet? And if so, what does that connection look like? I think we all know that access to broadband internet is an issue for a lot of our rural communities. And even some of us who might have okay internet, sometimes it just can go in and out. So we'll just talk through that with participants. And then also make sure to ask them that, are you planning on using any data on your phone to connect to the class? And just talking through what that might mean if you're streaming video. We'll also talk through about what device the participant plans to use. So we know Zoom is fantastic. We love it. It works really well across desktops, tablets, and mobile devices, but that display and experience, it looks a little bit different depending on how you connect. And so for a lot of our participants, this is their first distance learning experience, and it's also their first time learning and using Zoom. So we want to make sure that they're really comfortable. So the coaches will also talk with them about just what to expect, what it looks like when you enter into a Zoom room, and just some other things that they want to be mindful about. So the coaches provide some instructions on how to mute and unmute, let them know if possible, try and find a room without distractions, even though we know we're all at home at this point in time. So life, kids, pets, those kinds of things, they'll happen and they'll get in the way, but that's just fine. And then we also just talk about some of the confidentiality pieces and that the Zoom call, it's not going to be recorded. And so we feel very fortunate here in Minnesota that not only do we have really experienced coaches who are incredible educators, but they're also so savvy with the technology itself. They know Zoom in and out. And so we feel that for them to prep participants for what to expect, it helps the participants feel a lot more confident coming into Zoom. And so over time, they'll get less hung up on that technology and they can focus more on the content delivery. And Nikki will talk in greater detail about some of those aspects in just a little bit. So next slide, please. So we also use Qualtrics as a primary system to collect our weekly data. So we have a standard survey that we utilize for each of our cohorts, and each participant is assigned a de-identified code. Their coach will let them know what that code is as part of the readiness assessment. And towards the end of each session, coaches will send out the link to the Qualtrics to everyone, ask them to complete the survey where they can record their weight and physical activity minutes. And then we also include a few additional questions. I think we have one in there that focuses on technology issues. Of course, we have coaches that can troubleshoot those issues in real time during the class, but we also want to keep track about what issues might arise just over time. And then at the last core session, we also asked participants to provide some general feedback about the distance learning model. So just what worked, what didn't, their overall level of engagement, just as an easy way for us to track some of those ongoing issues and solutions, and then just a part of our overall process evaluation. And so for some cohorts, they opt to do their food tracking in the Qualtrics survey, and then others might choose to use some different apps. So I'm gonna pass things back over to Nikki and she can talk through our process about receiving and providing feedback.
Thanks, Kate. And Carlin, I'll have you go on to the next slide for me. So the way we provided feedback or got feedback to and from participants looking at food tracking, we really left it up to the participant themselves. Initially, we thought, okay, maybe we'll say we're only going to use MyFitnessPal, or maybe we were going to solely use Lose It. But because some of our participants weren't necessarily comfortable with different types of technology, we really wanted them to utilize the tool that worked best for them. So depending on our cohorts, really kind of guided which tracking tool we decided to use. A couple of the biggest ones were MyFitnessPal. And with MyFitnessPal, The participants themselves added the lifestyle coach as a friend to view the fitness trackers and the food trackers. The lifestyle coach at that point in time could then download the food log and provide the comments using Adobe. And that seemed to work out really well. They were able to provide the comments in Adobe and then just email back the responses. And that went over very well. And then we also had some lifestyle coaches use Lose It and Ascend that Lynn had mentioned previously. So those are just really those partner tools, and Ascend allows a lifestyle coach to comment within the app and the participant to get that feedback. So our participants really, like I said, got to utilize whichever tool worked best for them, and the lifestyle coach just kind of went with the flow and provided feedback, but it seems to have gone over very well, and that way we're allowed to provide that individualized support. So the tools that we used to offer the program itself, Zoom, just kind of like everybody else on the call today. However, we really were really careful and conscientious about utilizing all of the various facilitation functions for engagement on Zoom and tailoring those engagement techniques for each cohort. So on Zoom, you know that there's a chat function and there's polling functions and there's a whiteboard and there's breakout rooms, and they all serve a phenomenal purpose, but not every single technique is necessarily the right fit for a particular group. So our educators did such a phenomenal job of really understanding their group and adjusting based on not only participant preference, but also their level of comfort with the different techniques. You know, some groups just weren't really comfortable with breaking out into a breakout room and then getting back into the main space. There might have been some confusion. So maybe breakout rooms weren't the right tool or strategy to use. In addition to that, something that I think has been phenomenal and maybe a little bit unique in comparison to other offerings is that Minnesota Extension utilizes a co-facilitation model. So there's always 2 lifestyle coaches that are present for our distance learning classes. And we originally started it off just as like, okay, maybe we want this extra support person there. But it turned out to be something that went over spectacularly in every single cohort. So the 2 coaches worked together in kind of planning the lesson itself, who is going to lead and who is going to be that background person. And the background person really served as the person who could monitor chat, or if a participant was having technology issues, they had cell phone numbers so that they could directly contact them and kind of work with them on that technology piece. They also served as sort of a backup. So let's say the lifestyle coach themselves all of a sudden lost connectivity and they've disappeared and they're not able to lead the class. That backup person was there to help facilitate and make sure everything ran smoothly. And then following the session, then the 2 coaches, as well as part of our planning team, kind of did a debrief about what went well in the lessons and what needed to be changed. And I think that process as well just really helped us to fine tune and improve upon all of our class offerings. And then communication between sessions. So you can see we have a whole list here. It wasn't just one way that our coaches were communicating with their audience. It depended on the cohort themselves as to which communication style worked best. But I would say for the most part, there was a good combination of a few of these. So Remind is just a text messaging app that you can use to send out reminders for upcoming classes, but it also send brief messages. Maybe you want to send a quick motivational quote or something like that. You can send that via Remind. WhatsApp was another communication tool that was used, and our Spanish speaking class, actually, that was one of their main sources of communication between classes. And they decided to use that because it was a platform that their participants were already comfortable with and they didn't have to learn something new. And then of course, email, Facebook groups, and then that bottom one there, Notion, is kind of our project management system that we use here at the University of Minnesota. And it allows us to kind of do this open space sharing where a cohort could share just a little bit about something they learned in their class, do a little debrief, and then anybody else who would be offering DPP in the coming weeks or in the coming months could look at those notes and be able to learn from it. So those were really the key pieces in ways that we communicated with our participants as well as each other during our sessions. And I see just a couple questions in the chat. Do we have a preference between Lose It or MyFitnessPal? It really depended on the cohort, and the coach and the participants. I've had some people who have said they love Lose It and Ascend, and then I've had other people said, no way, I'm only using MyFitnessPal. So it's really dependent on the participant and the coach. And maybe that was it. Okay, perfect. I'll leave it to you then, Carlin.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nikki. So now is the time for you all to ask questions. And I'll dare to say that you can either put your question in the Zoom chat box, or if you can unmute yourself and you'd like to just speak your question, please feel free to do that. And then if that gets too crazy, we'll go back to the chat box. So if anybody has a question now, please put it in the chat box or just unmute yourself and ask your question. Janice, I'm wondering, did we miss any questions that came through the chat box? Oh, there you go.
Most of them have been answered. There's a question about how long the program is, and it's a year-long program. There's a question about which curriculum. So again, there are two CDC approved curriculum, the 2012 and the Prevent T2, and different states use different ones. There was the question about how much was charged. That was answered. And then the question on Lose It or FitnessPal, again, that's preference.
I do see one here about scale and charging.
Right.
From Chris here. So we did provide scales to participants if they needed them. Not every participant needed a scale. We do not charge for our classes, but we were able to utilize some Department of Health funding to provide those scales.
There's a question about what's your favorite function of Zoom for interaction?
I would say overall, between the cohorts, probably the whiteboard was one of the more popular functions. Kate, do you have a different take on it? But I feel like that's what I heard from every cohort. They like to utilize that.
I think that's right, Nikki. It was just great that everybody could contribute to that as part of the group. And I think it also depended on class size. For some of our smaller groups, if there was only say 4 to 5 people, like we would not probably use that breakout function just because it just didn't really work well. And that small group discussion worked just as well. But I think whiteboard was great. And then also just the chat, especially in those earlier sessions, since you're not in person and it's a little bit harder to kind of build that sense of community. I think that kind of could help loosen people up and give them a voice before they were kind of like, okay, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to unmute myself.
And then there's a question about the participants being able to navigate Canvas and how much upfront time was to put it together.
Yeah, the Canvas site, putting it together has been a little bit more of an investment, but hopefully it will not be needed for all the agents. So it's kind of like something nice to do that can be used by a wide group of people. So I wouldn't want everybody trying to create their own Canvas page to do this. For the participants, the only thing they see when they log into Canvas is the week's page. So it's really simple for them. They don't really need to navigate anything. They just log in and there they see the tracking buttons, the Zoom buttons, and what we're going to cover that day and some of the extra links if they want to do that. Kim might be able to comment on any issues we've had with people using Canvas. Getting into Canvas was a little bit hard the first time, but I think we've got that down.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Lynn, is there's really what she showed you guys was a lot of the back end, but for participants, it's really just one front page a week that changes for them.
A couple people just added comments that they use Jamboard as an alternative to Zoom. And then there's a question, do you do an icebreaker every week?
Kim might be able to answer that one.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
wasn't sure if that was to me or the others. Yeah, I try to do at least some kind of conversation starter or check-in activity with folks each week, just to, especially on Zoom, as people are kind of coming in maybe a few minutes late or, you know, getting connected. It's nice to get the conversation started with folks and just kind of warm up the room.
Yeah, we always follow up with the previous lesson and say, you know, how did that go last week? Did you try anything? You know, that type of thing. Not so much an icebreaker, but just definitely like a lead in. And then I was going to comment on what Lynn has done with Canvas and how great it is. There are other programs out there like Habit New and some other programs that you can purchase to deliver NDPP, but I really like the idea of what Lynn has done. I know it was a lot of work, but it's pretty awesome, Lynn, and I know you're still working with it, but it'd be great to have it for other universities. I know we would probably use it like in a Google Classroom or something like that, but I think it's a great idea to have it all put together, all there for your coaches. I think the database end of it is awesome. I know some of the other programs that are for sale have an integrated database where you can easily upload it to the CDC data. But the flip side of that is that we don't have as much control over it, which I know with what you've done, we have more control over the design of it. What I love about Zoom is this, being able to have the face-to-face interaction. I know there's programs where the participant can get on and do a self-led DPP. That's a completely online self-led lesson. I think it takes away from the support group model, which is so successful for NDPP. But there are some other programs out there for sale, but I really like what Lynn has done, what Virginia Tech has done.
And I'm hoping to, you know, if we can move that to Google Classroom, that would be a really great project. So let's get funding and do that. That would be really nice.
And I'm going to stop us there real quick. This is Carlin. It is 2:00. There is one other question that I thought maybe Kim could address and others as well. How do you celebrate week 16 and the last class of the year now that we're online?
That's a great question.
Kim, I don't think you haven't gotten to 16 weeks.
I haven't gotten
Kim?
there yet. No. So that is something that we're thinking about. I think I may try to have some sort of guest speaker on Zoom, kind of to bring in some kind of like different piece. We just sent out our 3-month progress report 2 weeks ago. And one thing I'll say about that is we had, you know, a few people who had been stragglers the weeks before that. And once that was sent out, then yesterday or Wednesday of this week, everybody was in class. So I do think it's really important to emphasize, you know, talking to your participants and catching up with them.
What we do at week 16 or have done with our online group is really just stop, talk about where they're at. Did they meet that first 6 months goals? You know, what's in the curriculum? And then we've also had kind of a special raffle with like a bigger prize, something for them to look forward to. And then our year end, we have 2 that are coming up on the year end, actually this month and next month. And one of them, they are actually going to meet in a park 6 to 10 feet apart and have an end of the year celebration. That's with my Spanish group, not my Spanish group, but my coach's Spanish group. And she's asked me to come and talk to them and present. So we'll see how it goes, but excited for that.
So everybody, I have posted, I mentioned at the beginning that we would love you all to please complete our evaluation. I just posted in the chat a link to that evaluation. If before we end, you could just click on that link, it'll take you maybe, I don't know, 3 minutes to fill that out for us, but that's really important to us. So if you all could please do that, we'd appreciate it. And we'll also try to get you all a follow-up email with that link. But if you could just take a few minutes, I'm gonna leave it up for a while, to click on that link before we exit and fill out that survey, that would be much appreciated. If you all are interested in connecting with our group, the Cooperative Extension National DPP Interest Group, you can contact either myself or Vanessa or any one of our speakers. All of them are part of that group. We do have a website. That's our website URL is there, ce-dpp.extension.org. will be posting the recording of this webinar on that site. And there are other resources for you there as well. So I just want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank particularly our panelists who did such a wonderful job of telling you about their programs. Please do fill out our evaluation survey, and that will end the webinar for today. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Carlin.
Thanks, Carlin.